One of the questions that I was asked was about to address was the Netflix, and I'm assuming that that they showed it in the UK. And as you know, I was in the film. Let me start there. I did not know that Lewis Henry Gates, otherwise known as Skip Gates, produced the film. Some of you know him. He's the head of Black Studies at Harvard. And had I known that Skip Gates was the producer of this documentary, I would not have participated. He had a record that I never have trusted him. And I know that if he had his name on it, if he touched it, it wasn't going to be necessarily in the best interest of African people, period. So I didn't know that. And I apologize. I've been doing that a lot lately, but I apologize to brothers and sisters, for my foolishness in even participating in that documentary. And if you look at the documentary in its totality, it's propaganda. And what it's designed to do is this. Two things. Number one, it continues to promote the many memorable thesis of Malcolm X. Malcolm was he was reinventing himself. He was trying to turn corners. He was this and that. Malcolm was confused. Malcolm didn't know where he was going. All that type of stuff. But more than that, they promote the notion that Malcolm's assassination was simply the Nation of Islam unilaterally, singularly doing what they did, killing Malcolm. So what they did was they basically have confined and simplified Malcolm's assassination to it basically being, which is the official version anyway, that the Nation of Islam and Malcolm had these problems, and then that's what's going to end up in Malcolm's, that's why Malcolm's going to be killed. So the role that the enemy played in Malcolm's assassination, the FBI, for example, the NYPD, they were just basically blackwashed in the film. They interviewed me twice. One day I gave them from 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night, 12 hours. And I spent, of that time, at least 10 hours talking about FBI, NYPD, and their role in Malcolm's assassination. Because I had previously spent half of or most of a day talking about the nation and the FBI. But this day, I spent all this time talking about the FBI. I read, quotes from, documents that I use and just different things like that. I showed them step by step how the counterintelligence program did, what they were able to do to exploit differences between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad, and ultimately to create friction, and then ultimately a war between Malcolm and the nation, and just different things like that. I'm putting it in context by talking about how they did this to other groups, either before or during, and all of these things, so to make it easy for anybody listening to understand the complexities of Malcolm's assassination. I spent 12 hours and they did not use a second of all that discussion. And what I would suggest to you, because they knew what their mission was. Their mission wasn't to give you an accurate portrait of Malcolm's assassination. their interest and their mission was to promote the Nation of Islam thesis. Those of you who have ever studied the John Kennedy assassination, they talk about the magic bullet thesis. That's the official version, is that the bullet came and it hit, like one man with one gun, one rifle ends up shooting John Kennedy and John Connolly. And in order for the bullet to have done what it did, it hit him, and then the bullet turned around, and it came back, and it hit him. And in many ways, what the Gates film is about is promoting the magic bullet theory in the Malcolm assassination. It's all nation, period. Now, why are they going there? Because that's acceptable. That's what white folks will pay documentary money for. And it keeps Skip Gates out of trouble. Because remember, these white corporations, they give him $1 million to do these type of documentaries. I think he got one now on the Black church. And if you look at any of those documents, there's always an underlining motive for him. Most of the time, he's watering down something that's important in our community. That's his mission. That's how they use him. And they will continue to finance his documentaries as long as they're not serious or threaten traditional white thinking. So I can go into more details, but that film, to me, and they're doing a second one, ain't no way in hell. You got me the first time. You don't have to worry about me coming back for a second time. So they asked whether or not, final point, I was asked whether or not there was anything new in the film. Not if you read my book. There is absolutely nothing in that film that isn't based upon my book. And the reason for that is because Muhammad, the narrator, the one that they built the film around, his understanding of the assassination of Malcolm X doesn't go beyond my book. Now, I know, and in the film, they had him, introducing the notion that these two innocent men and all that. All of that was in my book. There's nothing new in that film. But they had a dilemma, though. If you look at the film in its totality, the way that they worked it was this. They had already decided that Muhammad was going to be the focal point for their film. But I was an inconvenience for them because I already had a book. I was already known as the foremost authority on Malcolm's assassination. And all of the so-called new information that Muhammad is going to introduce in the film had already been out there since even before I wrote my book, because I was already giving lectures about it. So there was nothing new that Muhammad brought to the scene, to the table. Nothing. So their dilemma is they can't identify me as an author. So that's why all they said for me was historian whenever they did show me doing, talk about something. And they couldn't identify me as an author, nor could they identify me as a serious researcher, because they were reserving that for him. So basically, they needed me in it to bring some type of perspective to it. But they had to minimize the reality of my research and attribute it to Muhammad, which is what they did. And then they had a white man, David Garrow, who's published some pretty decent books. And then he says for the camera that Muhammad is the foremost authority on Malcolm X. And I get all these phone calls from people. Did I miss something? No, you ain't missed nothing. And don't even worry about that stuff. So this is the bottom line for me with that film. That film is watering down Malcolm's assassination, just as they watered down Malcolm's politics, and they present Malcolm, like the Marable book, as a more acceptable person for white folks to appreciate. The revolutionary fervor of Malcolm X doesn't come across in that film. Nor does Malcolm's politics as far as the United Nations and all those things that made Malcolm a threat to the United States, they ignore all of that. So it's just about Malcolm and the nation. I know they talk a little bit about the FBI, they interview the FBI agent here and there, that type of stuff. But if you look at that, it was all superficial and shallow. This was simply about white folks using Skip Gates to promote the magic bullet theory in the Malcolm assassination, the Nation of Islam, in its most simplistic terms, killed Malcolm X. And that's what that film is there to produce, to promote, to advocate. So I went longer than what I wanted, but I'm going to stop there. And, Baba's, or whatever y'all need me to do from this point forward, I'm a soldier. Just let me know. But for the most part, that's all that I really wanted to say today.
Then I'm worried, giving thanks, Baba Zak Kondo, I'm saying, for your sterling work preserving the legacy of Baba Omowale, Malcolm X, and we know that on his passport and his official documents, he carried the name Malik Shabazz. And so we want to honor you for your work, Baba. And as you said, as he kept saying, if you never did anything else, well, Baba, if you never did anything else other than this book, it'd have been a great work. But we honor you for continuing to stay on the pulse of our community.
Thank you, Baba.
The legacy of Baba Omowale Malcolm X, it is very important. Right, Brother Leader Mbandaka will be joining us shortly to engage in the discussion, the Q&A. And so, brothers and sisters, get your even though Baba Zak said he's on a, what's it called, low tech, yeah? He's a low tech guy. Right. I hope you had your low tech pen and paper, while he was presenting, and also your relatively high tech, phones and other gadgets to take notes. And these things is very, very important. I'm going to share the link in the chat shortly, that way you can come through and ask questions, and you can also come live and ask questions. But you can also, if you don't want to come live, type your questions in the chat. Type your questions in the chat, and we'll ask Baba Zak dutifully. Right, Baba Zak. Whilst we are awaiting the arrival of Brother Leader Bandaka, let me just ask you your perspective on this on the topic of this new information that is supposed to have come out in the last 24 hours with a deathbed confession by Raymond Wood.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening. I had a program yesterday that was sponsored by the Malcolm X National Commemoration Committee, and I was able to watch some of the news conference that took place right before I had to go on, with the commemoration committee. And the part that I saw, and I've since read something this morning, this is my understanding of everything. My understanding is, now, I'm familiar, by the way, if you look on page, I think it's 164 in my Malcolm X book, I mention, Raymond Wood.
And you're exactly correct, because I've got the page right here.
Okay, right.
So I'll read the section in a second, but go ahead. Okay,
so basically, here's the thing, though. This guy was a member of BALSI, the Bureau of Special Services and Investigation, which was the NYPD's secret counterintelligence organization. His job was simply, he was an NYPD guy who they pulled, from the NYPD. They didn't even give him training. And what they basically did was they gave him a crash course for the most part, and then he infiltrated an organization called the Black Liberation Front. So this is when we first hear about him. And basically, what ultimately ended up happening is this guy helps to set up this organization to basically go down. Final point is this: he's going to ultimately send brothers and sisters who had done nothing legally. He's going to send them to prison, because what's going to happen is when they had a trial, it's going to come out that he did more than anybody to try to, organize this conspiracy to bomb the Statue of Liberty and all these other types of the Washington Monument, all these types of things. And then from there, they simply sent him other places to destroy African organizations like the Black Panther Party, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, supposedly, this guy's kept all this to himself for all these years, because that was the 60s. And so now, he says, okay, he starts to tell some of his closest, people, when I die, I'm going to leave a letter and I want y'all to publish it. Mm-hmm. This guy could have helped us while he was alive if he wanted to. But to wait until he's dead to try to put out stuff. Now, this is my understanding. The only stuff that's come out that's significant that I've heard is that he talks about how the NYPD and the FBI compromised Malcolm's security leading up to his assassination. So, that's significant, and that's something that we certainly want to take, a harder look at. Other than that, I haven't seen anything else that we're supposed to get excited about.
Right.
And then, one other thing that I joked about this in my presentation yesterday. It's like, okay, the way that his family is spending this is interesting. Right. This is what I heard. I think it was his nephew. I think it's his nephew.
Yeah, I had a cousin, but Reggie Wood you're talking about.
Okay, right. But the way he was spending it was, and I just started laughing. He said that his uncle, that the FBI and the NYPD forced his uncle. He had to do. His uncle had to betray our people. What did I miss? You don't force a traitor to betray his or her people. He chooses to betray his people. So I just thought that was comical. They forced him. So I give Gene Robbins, every agent who has ever betrayed us and infiltrated our people for the enemy, they were forced to do it by the enemy. Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I suppose it's sympathetic to suggest that that the business of getting agents in Black Power movements is about compromising the individuals who are supposed to be the agents, right? But they have a way. There's another documentary whereby they got Gene Roberts in it, and they turned him into this innocent bystander,
right?
who was really sincere about this thing, and I think he was, sitting with Brother Benjamin Kareem, like it was nothing, like he was not a police informant. Anyway, greetings and welcome to Brother Leader Bandaka. Tadamwadi.
Jumbo Baba, how you doing? I can't hear you, Baba.
Tadamwadi.
How you doing?
I am richly blessed and giving thanks and praises, Baba Zak Kondo. How are you? You're sounding.
I'm doing well, and it is so good to reconnect with y'all. And by the way, once all this crazy stuff is over, we need to get back on track to bring you on over here too. So, let's get this junk out the way. Absolutely. And I look forward to helping to bring y'all over here.
Baba, you've pronounced my beating heart. My heart has been beating in that direction for the last, however long. But that the invitation is well received, and that we are ready and willing, circumstances allowing. But I just want to say, which Baba Zak Kondo, that your work, your tremendous work in reviving and unearthing true information about the life, the legacy, and the brutal assassination of our eminent prophet and king, Papa Omowale Malcolm X is considered priceless within the Al-Kebelan revivalist movement and in so many parts of the African world. I know the book has been held up before, but I want to hold it up again. I want to hold up my own copy, which I treasure as another signed copy. And
I appreciate that.
yes, and I would encourage listeners, viewers, to try and obtain a copy if you have not yet. And I want to endorse what Baba Zak, what you said a few moments ago, that the film is based entirely on what has been documented in this excellent, excellent work. I've seen the film, and as you rightly say, there is nothing in that film that is not covered thoroughly and in depth in this book, which is very balanced and looks at the different facets and aspects of the conspiracy to assassinate Papa Omowale Malcolm X. And just for the record, it has always been the position of the Al-Kebelan revivalist movement that with or without complicity of elements who engaged with or were members of the Nation of Islam, or may have been entangled in the leadership of the Nation of Islam, with or without, there was a plan, a state plan to assassinate Papa Omowale Malcolm X, in as much as there was a plan to assassinate, a state plan to assassinate Papa Martin Luther King Jr. and various other African freedom fighters, not only in America, but in other parts of the world. And Papa Omowale Malcolm X was one of our most outstanding. And so they were baying for his blood. So with or without complicity within our community or within any organization, the plan was to assassinate him. By the American government and its agencies.
Don't worry. Sorry, Baba Leader. Yeah, so I hasten to add that I think, Baba, that we can judge the quality of your contributions to the documentary by how little of them actually appeared in the documentary series itself, because they barely used you. Anything that you had to say. It reminded me of that Look for Me in the Whirlwind documentary, yes, whereby Baba Tony Martin appears in like 2 scenes, and he's the foremost scholar. So they didn't use you very much, and I'd take that as a compliment if I was you. Right.
Can I just quickly say, Brother Shakara, I'm glad you've made that connection, because for anyone viewing who don't yet know, Baba Zak Kondo is the Tony Martin of the legacy of Papa Malcolm X.
That's right.
This is the Tony Martin equivalent.
That's right.
But that's I told you this when I was in the UK, that to be associated like that with a Tony Martin is a great honor for me. So I appreciate that that analogy. Thank you very much.
All right, my elders, I want to